April 18, 1942. 7:38 a.m., local Tokyo time. The Pacific is cold and gray, wind at 23 knots from the east, sea state 5. Task Force 16 moves on a heading of 270 degrees, roughly 650 nautical miles east of Honshu. Under Vice Admiral William, Bull, Halsey, 2 aircraft carriers, USS Hornet, CV-8, and USS Enterprise, CV-6, lead a formation of cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 2 fleet oilers. On Hornet's flight deck, lashed down beneath canvas covers, sit 16 North American B-25B Mitchell, medium bombers. Aircraft never meant for carrier use, engines sealed against salt spray, tails overhanging the deck edge by inches. This is the first time in history that medium bombers will launch from a carrier at sea, a technical gamble bordering on madness. Each B-25 carries 4 500-pound bombs, 2 high-explosive and M64A1S and 2 incendiary and M50S, plus auxiliary fuel tanks, bringing the total to over 4,100 liters. Armor plates removed, dorsal turrets stripped, tail guns replaced by broom handle mock-ups painted black to resemble .50 caliber barrels. Every ounce matters. The aircraft are overloaded beyond design limits. Takeoff weight, 31,000 pounds. Margin for error, 0. Crews number 5 men each. Average age, 24. Their maps aren't classified military charts, but National Geographic atlases marked by hand with Japanese cities circled in pencil. 7:44. The Japanese picket boat Nitomaru, a number 23 class auxiliary patrol craft, spots the task force and transmits. Enemy sighted, 650 miles east of Honshu. Hornet's radio intercept confirms it. Surprise is lost. Halsey's response is terse. Launch planes. The launch point was meant to be 480 miles out. Now it's more than 650. That extra distance means no one will make it back to the carrier. Their only hope is to bomb Tokyo and then fly on to China, over the mountains of Jiangxi, with almost no fuel margin. The order goes out. Start engines. The wind whips across the deck at 45 miles per hour. The ship's bow pitches in 5-meter swells. Takeoff distance, 467 feet. For comparison, a B-25 on land needs more than 1,400 feet to reach liftoff speed, about 115 knots. Here, pilots will have less than 5 seconds of full throttle before the deck ends and open ocean begins. Doolittle's own plane, Serial 40-2344, rolls first. Its twin right are 2600-9 Cyclone engines churn at 2,600 revolutions per minute, 42 inches of manifold pressure, nearly redline. Spray batters the windshield. As Hornet lurches into a swell, the deck angle shifts upward 3 degrees, just enough lift. Doolittle's aircraft leaves the deck, wheels grazing the spray, climbs, barely. One by one the rest follow, each plane teetering on the knife edge between flight and disaster. The sailors below cheer as every bomber clears the bow. 16 aircraft rise into the overcast and disappear westward. At 9 o'clock the task force turns back east. Its job is done. The bombers, now alone, form into loose elements. Navigation is primitive. No radio homing, no escort, no radar. Just a magnetic compass, a drift meter, and dead reckoning across a featureless ocean. They fly low, 200 feet above the waves, to avoid radar detection. Japanese coastal stations at Choshi and Osumi never spot them in time. By 12:15 p.m., Doolittle's group crosses the Japanese coast. Below lies the Tokyo Bay Area, Yokohama, Kawasaki, and the sprawl of the capital. The weather clears just enough for visual targeting. At 12:25 they release their bombs from 1,200 feet. 500-pound and M64s hit the steelworks and dockyards along the Sumida River. Incendiaries scatter through dense wooden districts. An M64s used TNT filler, about 260 pounds per bomb, capable of tearing through light industrial roofs. An M50s spread thermite clusters that ignite instantly on impact. Tokyo's air raid sirens wail. Anti-aircraft batteries open fire. but their elevation limits can't reach bombers this low and fast. From the ground, Japanese civilians see black dots and falling silver casings, then fire. 4 other groups strike Nagoya, Kobe, Osaka, and Yokosuka Naval Base. The material damage is minor, but the psychological shock is immense. For the first time in history, enemy aircraft bombed the Japanese home islands. Over Tokyo, Doolittle's plane takes minor flak hits but no serious damage. Fuel gauges, however, tell a grimmer story. The headwinds are stronger than forecasts. Consumption climbs to 115 gallons per hour. By the time the formation reaches the East China Sea, gauges hover near zero. Each crew now faces a choice: ditch in the sea or try to reach China in darkness. At 21:30 local time, most aircraft run out of fuel over the coast. Crews bail out into blackness. Some land in Chinese rice paddies, others crash into mountains. Of the 16 bombers, none return to the fleet. 8 men are captured by the Japanese, 3 executed. 1 crew lands in Vladivostok and is interned by the Soviets. Doolittle himself parachutes into a field near Lingling. He believes the mission a failure: 16 bombers lost, no aircraft carriers hit, and no return. "They'll court-martial me for losing 16 planes," he mutters to his co-pilot. But in Washington, the report reads differently. The raid proves that the United States can strike the Japanese homeland. It shatters the illusion of invulnerability that the empire had built after Pearl Harbor. Tokyo, Yokohama, Kobe, all burned, even if briefly. For Japan, the shock is strategic. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor, receives the first reports aboard Yamato. The message is clinical. Enemy bombers attack Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka. Damage minor. Morale shaken. Yamamoto says nothing for a long moment. Then quietly: "So, the Americans will not sit idle." The Imperial Navy's High Command demands a counterstroke: to extend Japan's defensive perimeter eastward, to find and destroy the carriers that launched the raid. Yamamoto proposes a plan: lure the remaining U.S. carriers into open battle near a tiny atoll called Midway. The trap will be perfect, he believes, an ambush to erase the insult of April 18th. But even as he plans, the physical proof of Doolittle's strike burns in Tokyo's rubble. 16 planes, 75 men, had crossed 650 miles of open ocean, dropped a few tons of bombs, and rewritten the psychological map of the Pacific. The material damage was small, the mental damage was catastrophic. The Pacific is quiet again by nightfall. Waves roll where the Hornet once stood. Somewhere over the darkened sea, a single life raft drifts, its pilot staring at the stars through salt and wind. The sky is cold, the horizon empty, but the message is clear. America is coming. April 19, 1942. The day after Tokyo burned. The rising sun is dimmed by ash. In the Imperial Palace, a thin mist of smoke still hangs over the roofs. Reports arrive every hour: fire in Sumida, explosions in Yokohama, aircraft sighted over Kobe. The Japanese High Command cannot comprehend it: American bombers over the home islands. Impossible. And yet it happened. Prime Minister Hideki Tojo slams his hand on the table. "Who allowed this?" he demands. No one answers. The room is silent except for the ticking of a wall clock. General Sugiyama, head of the army, insists the attack came from a secret Chinese base. Admiral Nagumo shakes his head. Impossible. Their range is too great. Then Admiral Yamamoto, calm and pale, lays a map on the table: the North Pacific. His voice is measured. It came from the sea. The revelation strikes like a torpedo. The Doolittle Raiders had launched from the carrier Hornet, 16 B-25 bombers, each stripped of armor, each flying farther than any American bomber was supposed to. Technical note: a standard B-25 Mitchell required 1,200 meters for takeoff. The Hornet's deck gave them less than 500. Engineers removed guns, armor, even the Norden bomb sights, replacing them with improvised crosshairs made from simple string and pins. The flight was a calculated suicide. The psychological damage is catastrophic. Japanese civilians believe the Empire's homeland untouchable. Now they have seen their capital burn. The myth of invulnerability, the divine wind, has been pierced. Newspapers print headlines in tiny type. The government censors panic to control information. Even as the fires are extinguished, the Ministry of War issues a single line to the press. No significant damage. But everyone in Tokyo knows the truth. They saw it in the sky. In the Navy's command room, Yamamoto sits alone. He understands what few others do. The Doolittle Raid was not a strike of destruction, but of intent. America has proved it can reach Japan, and it will again. We must destroy their carriers, he says quietly, before they destroy ours. Around him, staff officers nod, but Yamamoto's expression does not change. He knows time is no longer on their side. Within days, Operation MI, the invasion of Midway, is born. Its goal: to draw the remaining American carriers into a trap, to annihilate the U.S. Pacific Fleet in a single battle, and restore the illusion of Japanese dominance. The logic is elegant, the risk enormous. The plan calls for 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, to strike Midway, while a diversionary force attacks the Aleutians. Yamamoto believes the Americans will come running, desperate to protect their last forward base. Technical note: Operation MI required coordination across 4,000 miles of ocean, over 200 ships, including 4 carriers, 15 battleships, 12 cruisers, and 42 destroyers. Japan's air strength exceeded 250 aircraft, all carrier-based. The fleet's radio silence was absolute. Orders were encoded in the JN-25 cipher. What they didn't know, the Americans had already broken that code. In Pearl Harbor, Admiral Chester Nimitz reads the decrypted message from Station HYPO. The codebreakers, led by Joseph Rockefort, have confirmed it. AF is Midway. The same calm sea that once carried Japan's carriers to Hawaii will now carry America's back to them. Nimitz smiles faintly and draws a single circle on the map. We wait here, he says. For Yamamoto, the Doolittle Raid has turned pride into fury. For America, it has turned fear into strategy. 2 nations now prepare for a reckoning neither can avoid. The shock that began over Tokyo will end on a patch of ocean no wider than a city, where aircraft will decide the fate of empires. April 19, 1942. Dawn over the inland sea. The smoke of the Doolittle Raid still hangs in the upper air, thin gray threads trailing across the capital. From the windows of the Imperial Navy Ministry, the view toward Mount Fuji is blurred, the horizon indistinct. Inside, the mood is worse than the air, panic wrapped in silence. The home islands, the sacred homeland of the Emperor, have been bombed. Not by an invisible divine wind, but by foreign aircraft launched from the sea. The damage reports are absurdly small: 20 factories hit, 50 homes destroyed, fewer than 100 dead, but that is not the point. Tokyo's population of 6 million had believed the Imperial Navy guarded their sky as surely as their emperor guarded their souls. Now that belief has cracked, and in Japan, belief is the foundation of war. At the morning conference, Vice Admiral Mato Migaki presents intercepted reports. The Americans launched medium bombers from a carrier group east of Honshu. Estimated range, 650 nautical miles. A long pause. Even the most optimistic staff officers understand what that means. Their outer line of picket boats, the supposed screen of vigilance, failed completely. The Americans have done the impossible. Yamamoto listens without expression. He has spent 20 years studying the United States. A Harvard man, fluent in English, once naval attaché in Washington. He knows what industrial force America can unleash once provoked. He exhales slowly and says, "This war will not be won by fortresses or pride. It will be won by preemption." His tone is calm, but everyone feels the verdict beneath it. That afternoon, he dictates his directive for Operation MI. The handwriting is immaculate, deliberate. The plan is not simple revenge, it is architecture, a way to force the U.S. Navy into a single decisive battle under Japan's terms. The objective: lure out and destroy the remaining American carriers by striking Midway Atoll, the last barrier between Japan's empire and Hawaii. By April 25, the outline expands. The combined fleet will deploy over 160 ships, 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, 2 light carriers, 7 battleships, 15 cruisers, 42 destroyers, submarines, and supply vessels. More than 250 carrier-based aircraft plus 700 land-based planes from Wake, Saipan, and the Marshalls will support the operation. Every ship sails under radio silence. Every transmission uses the new JN25 code, thought unbreakable. In the inland sea, training intensifies. Pilots practice formation takeoffs, dive angles, torpedo runs. Instructors time every release, 5.8 seconds between bombs, a perfectionist's choreography. Our accuracy will destroy them before they can fire, boasts one lieutenant from Akagi's air wing. But even in training, accident follows obsession. One Kate crashes on landing, its torpedo detonates, killing 7 men. The explosion leaves a hole in the deck, patched overnight, unmentioned in reports. Far away, American codebreakers monitor the invisible echo of these preparations. At Station HYPO in Pearl Harbor, Commander Joseph Rockefeller's team sleeps in shifts. The air smells of coffee and ozone from the cryptographic machines. They have cracked much of the Japanese system but need proof that AF, a location mentioned in intercepted traffic, truly means Midway. Rockefeller convinces Nimitz to bait the enemy. Midway sends an uncoded message claiming its water purification plant has failed. 2 days later, Japanese transmissions report that AF is short on fresh water. The trap works. While Tokyo plots vengeance, Pearl Harbor sharpens the knife. The carriers Enterprise, Hornet, and the battered Yorktown prepare to sail. Yorktown's flight deck, still scarred from the Coral Sea, is repaired in just 72 hours, a feat of engineering desperation. The shipyard crews work 24-hour shifts, welding under floodlights, sealing plates so hot they glow cherry red. Her elevators groan, her deck plates still smell of burnt oil, but she will fight. In contrast, Japan's planning rooms gleam with confidence. Charts cover the walls, concentric circles marking strike radii, ship positions, time schedules calculated to the minute. Chief of Staff Nagumo Chuchi will command the carrier task force. He is methodical, cautious, a man of routines. Yamamoto's orders give him little room for improvisation, and that rigidity will later cost them everything. Even as the Navy drills for Midway, politics gnaw at its edges. The Army, jealous, distrustful, complains that the fleet overreaches, that it risks Japan's strength for pride. Prime Minister Tojo listens but defers to Yamamoto, whose prestige after Pearl Harbor is unmatched. The Admiral himself feels the unease. In his private diary he writes, "This victory must end the war, or it will become a death march." Far away, American codebreakers monitor the invisible echo of these preparations. At Station HYPO in Pearl Harbor, Commander Joseph Rockefeller's team sleeps in shifts. The air smells of coffee and ozone from the cryptographic machines. They have cracked much of the Japanese system but need proof that AF, a location mentioned in intercepted traffic, truly means Midway. Rockefeller convinces Nimitz to bait the enemy. Midway sends an uncoded message claiming its water purification plant has failed. 2 days later, Japanese transmissions report that AF is short on fresh water. The trap works. By late May, the Armada assembles at Hashirajima anchorage. Photographs from the time show a procession of steel, carriers lit by sunrise, destroyers aligned like spears. The sailors polish brass rails, hang banners, write last letters home. Some carry family talismans, others, rationed cigarettes. Morale is high, too high. The men still believe their empire is invincible. In the shipyards, engineers inspect the carriers one final time. On Kaga, mechanics test the aviation fuel pumps. Rotary hand valves feed from gravity tanks down to the main lines. Each pump moves 800 liters per minute through pipes no thicker than a man's arm. None are armored. A single fragment could rupture the system, spraying volatile vapor across the hangar. Nobody talks about such vulnerabilities. The Navy's doctrine treats prevention as dishonor. At the same time, Yamamoto makes final adjustments aboard his flagship Yamato. The ship itself is a symbol of Japanese power: 72,000 tons, 9 18.1-inch guns, armor up to 16 inches thick. Yet the Admiral knows she is already obsolete. Battleships are the relics of another age, he admits to his staff. Now the sky decides. Still, Yamato sails, a god of thunder whose time has passed but whose shadow commands obedience. Across the ocean, American reconnaissance patrols extend further each day. PBY Catalina's sweep arcs around Midway, searching for any hint of Japan's approach. Crews sleep in hammocks over bomb racks. The smell of salt and engine oil clings to everything. On May 28th, a Catalina from Patrol Squadron 23 spots unusual radio chatter far to the northwest. It's the first whisper of the oncoming storm. Back in Tokyo, Yamamoto convenes one last meeting. Charts are rolled up, documents sealed. He reminds his officers that radio silence is absolute. If we are discovered before the battle begins, he says, the gods themselves will not forgive us. His subordinates nod, unaware that discovery has already happened. American intelligence follows their every move. May 29th. The fleet departs in 4 groups. The main force with Yamato in the rear, the carrier striking force under Nagoya in the center, the Midway invasion group to the south, and the Aleutian diversion to the north. Engines thrum across the sea, smoke trails fade into the wind. The formation stretches over 600 miles of ocean, an armada vast enough to strangle the horizon. On each ship, discipline tightens. Officers conduct inspection rounds twice daily. Pilots memorize attack patterns, the shape of enemy carriers drawn from intelligence manuals. A Zero pilot, Ensign Tomonaga, writes to his wife, "If I die in light. Tell our son to remember the sky." Far below, in the engine rooms, men labor in heat above 40 degrees Celsius, surrounded by the thunder of turbines and the smell of fuel oil. Every bolt they tighten, every valve they turn, drives Japan closer to the decisive battle Yamamoto believes will end the war. The Doolittle Raid has become legend, whispered in mess halls, cursed in officers' clubs. Some still refuse to believe that 16 bombers caused all this. But the truth is written across the Pacific, in every convoy now sailing east. The empire moves because one April morning shattered its pride. By June 1st, the ocean between Tokyo and Midway fills with motionless silence, radio silence so strict that ships communicate only with flags and lamps. Weather reports vanish from Japanese airwaves. The Americans, reading the absence as clearly as words, know what it means: the storm is coming. On Yamato's bridge, Yamamoto stands alone as the sun dips beyond the horizon. The Pacific glows copper in the fading light. He studies the map: 4 red pins for his carriers, 3 blue ones for where he believes the Americans will appear. Somewhere in that empty space lies the battle that will decide the war. He murmurs a line from an old naval saying, "When steel meets steel, fate speaks last." The sea is calm that night, deceptive in its beauty. Above, the stars are clear, the same constellations that guided Doolittle's raiders 6 weeks earlier. The same wind that carried them east now carries the Imperial Navy west. Beneath that symmetry lies the cruel irony of war, both sides, chasing the same horizon, believing the next dawn will bring victory. June 4, 1942. Dawn is thin and gray over the North Pacific. On the ocean the air smells of diesel and salt. On Midway atoll the island wakes to the throb of engines and the rattle of ammunition belts. What begins here will decide whether aircraft or battleships command the sea. The day opens with 2 simultaneous realities. The Japanese plan unfolds with mechanical efficiency, and the U.S. trap, born of cryptanalysis and cold calculation, is poised to spring. Before first light, the Japanese carrier striking force launches its morning wave from Midway, dozens of B-5N, Kates, D-3A, Vals, and A-6M20s. From Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu the decks are a choreography of cat's paws and cables. Aircraft roll to the bow, steam bleeds into catapults, and cruise time launches to the second. The doctrine is surgical: suppress the island's air defenses, crater the runways, destroy hangars, and neutralize the air garrison before it can rise. Fuel lines are pressurized. Ordnance moves up from the magazines. Deck crews work with machine clock precision learned from months of high-tempo operations. Technical note: AD-3A Vale dive profile calls for a 3000 m climb and 50 to 60 degrees attack. Delayed armor-piercing fuses detonate within hangars. Lethal where fuel and aircraft concentrate. Midway's defenders are outnumbered but not blind. Cryptanalysis has given Nimitz a map of likely moves. Station HYPO's signals pointed to Midway as the objective. Radar operators and observers brace for contact. Lieutenant Commander P.A. Swede Johnson at the Midway radar site watches blips approach. Ground controllers scramble P-40s and Buffaloes that can climb but lack the range and nimbleness of carrier fighters. The first Japanese strikes come in waves. Runways cratered, hangars burning, fuel depots igniting. Radios scream, "Air raid! Air raid!" And still, the Americans have more to reveal. While Midway burns, farther out at sea the real contest forms. Admiral Nagumo's carriers maintain a careful posture. After the morning strikes they intend to rearm and refuel for a second blow, then launch against any U.S. naval presence. That window, when carriers recover, rearm, and refuel, is the exact vulnerability the Americans mean to exploit. Technical note: Japanese carrier operations moved ordnance rapidly through unarmored elevators into hangars packed with fuel and armed aircraft, efficient for sortie rate, catastrophic when hit. Nimitz's positioning is surgical: Enterprise and Hornet northwest of Midway, Yorktown, still scarred from Coral Sea, steaming to join. Intelligence provided bearing and time, patrols filled the gaps. Execution, however, is chaotic and brutal. American carrier air groups launch across long distances, thin fuel margins dictating unforgiving timelines. The sequence begins with the slow, obsolete torpedo bomber, the TBD Devastator. Designed for open sea delivery, already outclassed by Zeros, it is slow, fragile, and burdened with the temperamental Mark 13 torpedo. Pilots know this, and fly anyway. From Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown the Devastators climb into staggered wedges, propwash tearing at wings. They head toward the Japanese carriers with straight-faced courage. Their goal: draw the Japanese combat air patrol down to sea level and open the sky for dive bombers. Tactically sound, tactically a massacre. Zeros intercept in swarms. The Devastators are shredded before releasing torpedoes. Those that do find their weapons failing to run true, a mechanical betrayal of bravery. Technical note: early Mark 13s suffered depth keeping and detonation faults. Later fixes would cure them, too late for these crews. They score no hits. But their sacrifice drags every Zero down, empties tanks, and scatters formation. Into that opening come the SBD Dauntless dive bombers. Rugged, stable, precise. Pilots climb high, 20,000 feet where the air is thin, then fall. Dive brakes howl, the altimeter spins, bombs release within meters of the aim point. At mid-morning, SBDs from Enterprise and Yorktown find the Japanese carriers at their most vulnerable. Decks crowded with fueled, armed planes. The bombs pierce the hangars. The ships erupt. Kaga and Akagi blaze. Soryu follows. Fireballs vent columns of flame 100 feet into the sky. The voice of one dauntless crewman. The deck looked like a map of cars, fighters stacked, men running. I aimed between elevators. I dropped. In less than an hour 3 carriers burn. Precision and timing rewrite the Pacific. But the fight is not over. Hiryu survives, launches her counter-strike that batters Yorktown. Damage control teams wade through smoke and heat, sealing bulkheads, pumping floods. Technical note: Yorktown's survival hinges on trained crews, redundant systems, and relentless improvisation. Across the water the cost mounts, torpedo squadrons decimated, dive bomber crews lost. Yet Nagumo's carrier force collapses, 3 carriers ablaze, aircraft reserves gone, operational capacity ruined. For the Americans the loss is heavy, the reward decisive. In 4 hours, Carrier power in the Pacific is redefined. Radio silence breaks. Akagi burning. Kaga hit. Soryu ablaze. Nimitz reads the reports in Pearl Harbor's underground command room. His gamble, to trust code-breaking and patience, has worked. But victory is never clean. Yorktown lies wounded. Both sides count wrecks and men. As daylight fades, the ocean gathers oil and silence. Smoke stains the horizon where the great carriers died. Pilots return with faces blackened by flak, engineers haul hoses, medics bandage burns. The sea is littered with proof that the age of the battleship is over. In the minutes after the strikes, commanders on both sides learn the same lesson. Carriers are not fortresses. They are beating hearts, vulnerable in rhythm. A hole in procedure, a deck crowded mid-rearm, a delayed patrol, a faulty detonator, can erase an empire. Night falls on a different ocean than morning. The gray dawn that greeted Midway is gone. Now the horizon is red with smoke and memory. The calm that follows is not peace, only a pause. Radios whisper, ships drift, and both fleets wait for the next light, knowing that history has already changed its course. June 4, 1942. Late afternoon. The horizon between clouds and fire is hard to tell apart. 3 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, are burning wrecks, their flight decks warped into red arcs of steel. Only Hiryu remains. Her captain, Taman Yamaguchi, stands on the bridge as the oily smoke from his sister ships drifts over the sea. He is calm, immaculate, uniform pressed, voice steady. He has 1 carrier left, and no illusions. He orders, "Prepare a counter-strike." Below, on Hiryu's hangar deck, armorers and mechanics work in a world of heat and gasoline. Planes are rolled forward, bomb racks armed, torpedoes loaded onto B-5 and Kates under floodlight glare. Every second matters, and every second increases risk. Technical note: torpedoes aboard carriers are fueled with compressed air and pure oxygen. Handling them on deck during combat operations is a calculated hazard. The slightest spark or blast wave can turn the hangar into an open furnace. At 1,430 hours, Yamaguchi's first strike, B-5 and Kates escorted by A-6 M20s, takes off into the western sun. Their target, the carrier that struck them, Yorktown. They find her by the white plume of her own smoke. Yorktown has already been damaged once by an earlier attack, but her crew's damage control is extraordinary. Men have patched the deck with steel plating, reconnected fuel lines, and restored flight operations within an hour. She sails again, scarred but alive, launching fresh fighters to meet the incoming wave. The Japanese pilots come in low, torpedoes slung under their bellies. Dive bombers follow from higher altitude. The first attack wave finds Yorktown around 1445. Anti-aircraft batteries erupt, 5-inch, 1.1-inch, and 20mm Oerlikons, throwing shells into a wall of flame and shrapnel. Technical note: U.S. carrier A defenses rely on layered fire, heavier guns for altitude bursts, lighter Oerlikons and .50 caliber Brownings for close-in defense. The radar-controlled directors give them precision the Japanese lack, but reaction time remains seconds. A torpedo hits amidships on the port side. The hull shudders, steam lines burst. Minutes later another strikes, flooding the engine compartments. Within 10 minutes Yorktown lists 15 degrees. The flight deck tilts, aircraft slide toward the edge. Captain Buckmaster orders, "Abandon ship." The last pilots lift off just as the carrier slows to a stop, engines dead. Smoke pours from her island, but her flag still flies. Yamaguchi's aviators return to Hiryu, jubilant. They have avenged their fleet, or so they think. He orders preparations for a second strike. But radar aboard Enterprise has already tracked the returning group. American commanders guess the vector of Hiryu's position. By 1700 hours, Enterprise and Yorktown's remaining dive bombers, including squadrons led by Wade McCluskey and Max Leslie, are rearmed and heading north. Their fuel reserves are thin, pilots exhausted, nerves stripped to raw instinct. The sun is lowering when they find her, a single carrier in a field of oil and debris. Hiryu steams at flank speed, recovering her returning planes. Her deck is alive with motion, crews hauling fuel hoses, planes taxiing for rearming. The Americans arrive unseen out of the cloud cover. The dauntless pilots roll inverted and dive. From Hiryu's deck, the alarm is shouted. Enemy dive bombers, bearing 330! The sky is suddenly full of descending dots, 40, 50 aircraft, each a silver cross in the sun. The first bombs fall at 17:23. A 1,000-pounder smashes through the forward elevator, detonating among fueled B-5 and Kates. The blast ignites a chain of explosions, torpedoes, avgas lines, ready bombs. A second hit rips the aft hangar. Flames race through the decks faster than pumps or men can contain. Within 15 minutes, Hiryu is a sheet of flame from bow to stern. Pilots who had landed minutes before now dive overboard into burning sea. Captain Yamaguchi refuses to leave. He stands with Rear Admiral Tomio Kaku on the bridge, watching the inferno rise. He salutes his men and says only, "Let us die with our ship." At 2050, Hiryu's fires reach the aft magazines. The blast throws debris hundreds of meters into the air. Her silhouette breaks in two. Night closes over the wrecks. The Japanese destroyers pick up survivors. Those from Akagi, Kaga, and Saria cling to oil-slicked rafts, faces blackened with soot. Across the sea, the American fleet gathers its wounded. Yorktown, still afloat, is taken in tow by the destroyer Hammond. Damage control crews return, rig pumps, and fight to stabilize her list. It seems she might be saved. June 6th morning? Submarine I-168, operating ahead of orders, detects the faint echo of two ships, one crippled carrier under tow, one escorting destroyer. Commander Yahachi Tanabe brings his boat to periscope depth. Through the lens he sees the smoke of Yorktown and the destroyer standing by. He fires 4 torpedoes. One hits Hammond amidships. The destroyer breaks in half, sinking within minutes. Another strikes Yorktown under her port quarter. Technical note: Type 95 oxygen torpedoes, based on the Long Lance, carry nearly 1,200 pounds of explosive and leave almost no bubble trail, lethal within 10,000 yards. Yorktown's pumps fail. The list worsens. Crews abandon ship for the second and final time. For a full day she remains upright, an empty hull on a calm sea, before finally rolling to port and slipping beneath the surface. Her battle flag goes down last, still fluttering in the wind. By June 7th, the battle is over. The Japanese combined fleet retreats westward. 4 of its fleet carriers, the core of the striking force that had ruled the Pacific, lie on the ocean floor. In exchange, the U.S. Navy has lost 1 carrier and 307 men. The numbers tell only a fraction of the truth. The real victory is strategic and psychological. Japan's offensive capability has been broken. Never again will it mount a large-scale carrier attack. On Yamato, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto receives the news in a single coded message. All 4 carriers lost. He reads it twice, slowly, as if the meaning might change. Then he says quietly, "So, we have lost the air." Around him, the officers stand in silence. In that moment the Japanese Empire's expansion dies, not with an explosion, but with understanding. The Pacific itself is changed. For the first time since 1941, the ocean belongs not to the Empire but to uncertainty. To whoever can rebuild faster, adapt better, and hold the initiative longer. The Americans will call it the turning point. The Japanese will call it the decisive defeat. For the men who were there, it was simply the day the sea caught fire. By nightfall, the burning oil slicks fade into darkness. The surface of the Pacific is scattered with wreckage, planks, papers, life jackets, and the occasional light of a floating lantern. The storm of war moves westward, but its echo stays. The carriers that once ruled the Pacific now sleep on the ocean floor, their steel bones rusting in silence. Above the waves, the stars are bright again. The same stars Doolittle's men followed east, the same constellations that guided Yamamoto west. Between them lies the wreckage of ambition, The proof that empires fall not from lack of courage, but from the quiet mathematics of timing, fuel, and fire. June 8, 1942. The Pacific is silent again, but it's a silence heavy with ruin. Smoke still stains the horizon where 4 Japanese carriers sank. The sea glitters like a graveyard of steel, fragments of flight decks, lifeboats, and drifting oil fires. 4 days, destroyers circle the wreckage, collecting survivors. Many refuse rescue, they bow toward the east and slip beneath the waves. On board Yamato, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto stares at the radio log. Every line is a eulogy. He removes his gloves, folds them carefully, and says only, "We have lost the future." Japan's naval power has been cut in half, not just in ships, but in skill. Most of the pilots who struck Pearl Harbor are gone. These were not replaceable men. They were the veterans of the carrier wars in China, trained through thousands of deck landings and live-fire missions. Their deaths leave Japan with planes but no hands to fly them. Technical note: training a carrier pilot in 1942, Japan required over 700 flight hours and 2 years of deck practice. By 1943, the program would be shortened to less than 150 hours, producing pilots who could take off but not always land. In Tokyo, the Navy Ministry goes dark. Typewriters fall silent, curtains drawn. Tojo demands a victory communique. The staff invent one. Enemy carrier Yorktown sunk, our forces victorious. But radio intercepts from Hawaii tell the truth. Japan's intelligence division learns 4 carriers are gone. Engineers calculate what it would take to rebuild them. The answer: 5 years and fuel Japan no longer has. Strategic note: each fleet carrier required 2.5 million man-hours, 30,000 tons of high-grade steel, and 800,000 liters of aviation gasoline for shakedown, resources impossible to spare under blockade. Yamamoto knows the only currency left is time. "We will bleed them in the Solomons," he says, ordering a defensive perimeter from truck to Guadalcanal. But it is a desperate equation. America's industry now runs at full power. In Detroit, Ford's Willow Run plant rolls out a B-24 Liberator every hour. In Seattle, Boeing produces one B-17 Flying Fortress every day. Naval shipyards at Mare Island and Brooklyn launch a destroyer every week. Steel and fire replace the silence of fear. Across the United States, newsreels play the headlines. "Victory at Midway!" Crowds fill theaters. Recruitment lines stretch for blocks. Men who once worked factory shifts now train with rifles. Women rivet, weld, and assemble engines. America's industrial rhythm becomes a weapon, a war machine that hums louder with every month. President Roosevelt says in a fireside address, "We will build faster than they can burn." It isn't rhetoric. It's mathematics. Meanwhile, Japan begins to starve, for fuel, for aircraft, for hope. Merchant convoys from Borneo are hunted by American submarines. Each tanker lost is another air division grounded. Aviation gasoline becomes so scarce that pilots train on wooden mock-ups, making engine noises with their mouths. Technical note: by 1944, Japan's high-octane avgas production fell below 30,000 tons per month, 1/5 of what its carriers consumed in 1941. Naval engineers tried to stretch supplies with benzene and pine oil blends. The result: corroded engines and reduced range by 25%. Yamamoto orders the rebuilding of pilot schools, accelerated, stripped of ceremony. Young men who once dreamed of serving the emperor now train knowing they may never land again. The seeds of the kamikaze are planted here, in the hopeless arithmetic of attrition. "If they can build 10 for every one we lose," says one instructor, "then we must make every one count tenfold." For the United States, Midway is not the end but ignition. Within weeks, Marine divisions sail for Guadalcanal, the first offensive on Japanese-held soil. The same carriers that survived Midway, Enterprise and Hornet, now escort convoys south through tropical storms. The Pacific changes color, from blue to the black of burning oil and the red of dawn air raids. For every island taken, dozens of lives are spent, but the initiative is no longer in question. Back in Japan, Yamamoto writes in his diary, "The enemy has learned. He is relentless. He predicts a long war, and he is right, though he will not live to see its end. A year later, intercepted radio traffic will lead American P-38 Lightnings to ambush his transport over Bougainville. The architect of Pearl Harbor will die in flames, his body still strapped in his seat, a symbol of a strategy that once soared and now plummets to earth. By late 1942, the Imperial Navy is no longer a predator but a patient, bleeding from 1,000 cuts. The loss of Midway forces new tactics, night surface attacks, last-minute torpedo runs, desperate gambles at the edge of radar range. Yet each victory shrinks, each loss grows. The Americans adapt faster, replace faster, learn faster. Every new carrier launched from Newport News carries the names of those sunk: Essex, Lexington, Yorktown. Each is faster, heavier, more armored. Technical note: the Essex-class carriers displace 27,000 tons, carry 90 aircraft, and are protected by 4-inch armor belts, twice the deck thickness of any Japanese carrier built before 1942. Midway's survivors, pilots, gunners, sailors, know what they've done but not yet what it means. They will see it in the coming years, at the Coral Sea, in the Solomons, at Leyte Gulf. Midway was not the final blow, but the fulcrum. It turned offense into defense, faith into endurance. The empire that once dictated the Pacific tide now rides it unwillingly toward oblivion. As 1942 fades, the sea over Midway is still. The wrecks lie silent under 5,000 meters of water, their steel cooling slowly in the dark. The fish swim through the hangars where men once worked, torpedoes rusting beside coral. Above them, the ocean looks the same, bright, calm, and endless. But everything beneath has changed. The Doolittle Raid lit the fuse. Midway was the detonation. From here on, Japan will fight not for victory, but for survival. America, once struck in the dark, now carries the fire eastward, island by island, ship by ship, until there is nowhere left to run. 1943. The Pacific no longer belongs to the Empire. Its maps are being rewritten in real time, line by line, island by island. After Midway, Japan still fights with fury, but not with balance. Every victory costs irreplaceable lives. Every loss bleeds fuel, steel, and time. America, once on defense, now dictates the tempo. The initiative, that invisible currency of war, has shifted, and it will never return. In August 1942, the Marines land on Guadalcanal. What begins as a small foothold turns into 6 months of brutal attrition. The jungle devours men. Disease does what bullets can't. The Imperial Navy tries to retake the island at night, running the Tokyo Express, destroyers racing under darkness to deliver troops and supplies. Technical note: Japan's destroyers, like the Kajiro class, were among the fastest afloat, 35 knots, and carried the Type 93 Long Lance torpedo, a 24-inch weapon with a 1,200-pound warhead and a range over 20 miles, far beyond anything Allied ships possessed. Their hits are deadly, but they can't change the equation. The U.S. Navy now controls the daylight. Carrier Enterprise, scarred from Midway, returns to battle, patched and relentless. American pilots fight through exhaustion and inexperience, but every month new squadrons arrive, better trained, better equipped. Production numbers are their armor. By 1943, U.S. factories produced over 6,000 carrier aircraft a month. Japan, less than 500. What Japan once compensated for with skill and courage, it can no longer match in scale. At sea, the Imperial Navy bleeds invisibly. American submarines, Gato and Balao-class boats, prowl the shipping lanes. Each carries 24 torpedoes, radar, and sonar, capable of stalking convoys undetected for days. Technical note: the Mark 14 torpedo, after early failures, was redesigned with magnetic pistols and contact detonators. By 1943 its reliability rose above 80%. One submarine could cripple Japan's oil supply by sinking a single tanker, a strategic kill equal to a battle one. By mid-1943, Japan's merchant fleet has already lost 1/3 of its tonnage. Fuel shortages ground aircraft and immobilized destroyers. The war machine that once roared now coughs on fumes. And then, April 18, 1943, exactly 1 year after the Doolittle Raid, Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, flies to inspect frontline bases in the Solomons. His itinerary, written in perfect detail, is intercepted by American codebreakers using the same system that won Midway. Operation Vengeance is approved. From Guadalcanal, 18 P-38 Lightning fighters lift off before dawn. Each twin-engine interceptor carries drop tanks for a 1,000-mile round trip, a mission at the very limit of their range. They fly low, skimming the sea to avoid radar. At 0934 hours, they sight 2 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, escorted by 6 Zeros, crossing Bougainville's jungle. The lead aircraft carries Yamamoto. The P-38s climb silently from below and behind. Captain Thomas Lanfer angles in from port. He fires a burst. 20 mm and .50 caliber rounds tear through the Betty's right engine, then the fuselage. Flames engulf the cabin. The bomber rolls, dives, and disintegrates in the trees below. No one survives. When Japanese search teams reach the crash site, they find Yamamoto still in his seat, hand resting on the sword in his lap. His watch is stopped at 9:35. The architect of Pearl Harbor has died on the anniversary of the Doolittle Raid, struck from the sky by the same kind of precision that once destroyed his carriers. Retribution, not by chance, but by design. His death is more than symbolic. It breaks the last thread of strategic coherence in the Imperial Navy. Command splinters. Younger admirals argue over tactics while the Americans perfect theirs. In 1944, the Marianas, the Philippines, and finally Leyte Gulf will follow, the last great battle of carriers. The Imperial Navy will die there, outnumbered, outgunned, and outflown. By 1945, Japan's skies belong entirely to America. B-29 superfortresses fly unopposed from Saipan and Tinian, carrying 10-ton bomb loads across 1,500 miles. Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, all burn under a rain of firebombs. The Doolittle Raid's 16 aircraft once shocked a nation. Now 500 bombers erase cities in a single night. The technological gulf has become absolute. Yamamoto had once warned, "If we are forced into war, I can run wild for 6 months. After that, I have no expectation of success." He was precise. Midway came in the 6th month. Everything after was mathematics, production, logistics, endurance. Japan had won its empire by surprise and courage. It lost it to arithmetic and fire. As the war ends, the Pacific is silent once more. The wrecks of the carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, sleep in black water, their decks now coral and memory. The twisted remains of Yamamoto's Betty bomber still rests beneath Bougainville's canopy, its aluminum frame swallowed by roots and moss. Above them, the same sky stretches, vast, blue, and indifferent. The same sky that saw Tokyo burn, Midway erupt, and Yamamoto fall. The story began with 16 bombers daring the impossible. It ends with a world changed forever. Because on that April morning in 1942, Japan learned that America would strike back, and by the time it understood how completely, the empire was already burning. If this episode sent chills down your spine, hit the like button. Tell us in the comments what struck you the most, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because this is only the beginning of a long journey into the darkest pages of history.